Well, I'd say it's unpredictable. It's eclectic. It mixes all kinds of things together into a kind of a heady brew. It's got something for everyone. It's got films that will really that are very demanding for the very serious film goer, and it's got films that are fun for the film goer that just likes to have an entertaining evening. Film Comment Selects began, I think, in 2001, and the original idea was to show films that didn't have distribution, films that we were championing in the magazine, but which New York audiences couldn't see because they weren't being brought over, they weren't being acquired by distributors. It was kind of a low point in foreign film distribution, so the emphasis was kind of on foreign language cinema. And as the years went by, it's changed. It shifted. More and more of the kinds of films we wanted to show were actually finding distribution. So in effect, we were now previewing films that people would eventually have a chance to see in theaters. We also started to add in other elements. We would do the occasional mini retrospective, or we started to show older movies, usually films that were kind of underrated or hadn't been seen for a long time. And we started to also do more mainstream films when it was something that we felt was a film comment kind of film. But things have sort of come full circle really this year, more than uh, for the first time in a long time. I'd say the majority of the films we're showing don't have American distribution, so we sort of almost come back to where we began. And a lot of these are films by filmmakers of real caliber, people like Manuel de Oliveira and Marco Bellocchio. So amongst the highlights this year, things I would really urge people to come and see, I would really emphasize the films that don't have American distribution. There's some really extraordinary films and some very special films. Obviously, Get Go in the Shadow by Manuel de Oliveira and Dormant Beauty by Marco Bellocchio. But also Motorway, which is a good example it's a Hong Kong action film by Poi Swai Chiang. That's a good example of the kind of genre movies we like to include. We don't just show art house cinema, we try to show the whole spectrum of cinema. So we've got like action movies and horror movies. And at the other end of the continuum, we've got things that are kind of on the avant garde end of things, like French filmmaker Philippe Grandieur's White Epilepsy, which is definitely a not to be missed event with Philippe Grandier in person. Um, uh, Amongst the other things, there are two films that I think are particularly special, small films that probably aren't ever going to be seen again in America, that I would really want people to come and see. They're films that are very close to my heart. A film called Nights with Theodore by a French director called Sebastien Beda. It's a lovely gem of a film about a boy and a girl who meet and spend their nights exploring this very unusual park in the north of Paris. It's a park that's sort of built around a little mountain, and it's got all kinds of different areas. And I've actually been to this park, so that's why I like the film probably. So that's it's a very beautiful, very small, very subtle film. But I think people who go will definitely want to hop on a plane to Paris and go see the park for themselves, because it's a very special and unusual film. The other film that's a very small film, but I think a very strong film, is a film called Three from Uruguay by Pablo Stoll, who is maybe a little bit known in this country for a film called Wiki, or Whiskey, as we like to call it. This is a film that's a relationship movie. It's sort of what I would call a mélancomedy. It's funny, but it's kind of sad too. It's about a guy a dentist, who's kind of a bit of a klutz, and his life is not really what it should be, and he's having these feelings that he wants to kind of reunite with his family, his wife and his daughter, his adolescent daughter, but they don't really pick up, they don't really take the hints, and he keeps kind of visiting them and doing odd, odd jobs around the house, but they're very caught up in their own emotional lives and their own kind of romantic escapades, and so things don't. He never quite manages to reconnect with them, but he keeps trying. And it's very funny, but it's also kind of sad. And it has an incredible soundtrack. Pablo Stoll is a real, rock music buff, and his character is, I think, a music buff. And so there are many, many songs in it. And the other thing that's really curious about this film is that I don't think there's a single scene in the film that lasts more than a minute. It's very fast, and a lot happens. And it's given to you in these tiny little portions. I've never seen a film that had so many scenes in it. So that's a wonderful special film that I hope people discover. Amongst the sort of retrospective elements in the film, I think there is almost nothing that we're showing that is not unmissable. Everything we're showing is unmissable. Let's put it like that. The Ingmar Bergman film from the Life of the Marionettes from 1981 is probably the first Bergman film I ever saw, and it's kind of a very disturbing film about a guy who murders a prostitute. But it's a rarity. It's not on DVD, and we're showing that twice. There's a double feature by an underrated American comedy director, Howard Sieff. His first two films, I think, are amongst his best. A sort of a road movie comedy called Slither, starring James Caan, who demonstrates what a great comic actor he is. And then the following film is Hearts of the West, the film starring Alan Arkin and Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges plays this young bumpkin who comes to Hollywood in the 1920s to break into the movies, or to become a writer actually, and ends up working as a stuntman in B-movie cowboy, in B-movie westerns. They're both lovely films, and it's two for the price of one. That's a double feature, part of our ongoing Film Comment double feature series. So two for the price of one, can't beat it. And the other really, I think, perhaps most important film that we're doing a retrospective screening of is Nguyen Jem Woo's A Borrowed Life. It's a Taiwanese epic from 1994 that's never been released in the US. We screened it in New Directors, New Films back in '94, and I don't think it's really ever been seen since. And it's just an amazing family saga about a father and a son, set in a mining town in the hinterlands. And it's a film that is much championed by Martin Scorsese. He cited it as one of his favourite movies of the 1990s. And then, last but not least, we're also doing a screening of Electra Gliding Blue, a movie about highway patrolmen in, I think, probably Arizona, it's the only film directed by James William Poesio, who was a music producer and rock promoter back in the 70s, and it stars Robert Blake, and it was a film that Alex Cox, one of our regular contributors to the magazine, wrote about in our last issue. And we like to, wherever possible, tie in things that have been written about in the magazine with things that we want to show. So the same goes for Heart of the West. There was a piece about that recently in the magazine. And generally, the program is supposed to reflect the films that the magazine has championed over the past year or has appreciated in some way. And we listen to our correspondents around the world and get tips from them about things that they think we should show. So we hope that people will come to this series because they're readers of the magazine and they want to kind of experience some of the films that we've covered and which they might not necessarily have another chance to see. So we see it in a way as enriching the experience of reading the magazine. On the other hand, we also see the magazine as a way of enriching the film-going experience. So it's a kind of a two-way street. For people who aren't familiar with the magazine, who aren't familiar with the series, I think there's something for everyone in this series. I mean, there are really challenging, demanding art movies. There are challenging, demanding avant-garde films. There are really fun comedies. There are horror movies. There are action movies. There's really something for everyone. If you're a fan of Isabelle Huppert, there's a reason to come. If you're a fan of Bollywood, there's a reason to come. If you're interested in seeing a film from Sweden called Call Girl, there's another reason to come. We try to kind of make it lively. We try to make it a kind of an unpredictable mix. But I think that we can also guarantee that we're only showing quality movies here, and they're movies that we stand behind. And there are even films programmed by other members of the editorial team that I haven't seen yet, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. So if you're really, if you're a passionate cinephile and you want to see things that are really brand new and things that are a little bit off the beaten track. For instance, we are doing the, I guess, New York premiere of Japanese director Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Penance. This is a 5-hour film. If you've got 5 hours to spare on President's Day, you'll be here at 1 p.m. to see an extraordinary film by a director who's been known for his really interesting horror movies and genre films, and this is kind of a return to that territory for him. So for people that like very long films, we've got one for you. Well, to quote or to paraphrase the great Marlon Brando, I do not know how you will be able to go forwards with your life without it.